Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. It is a bright sunny morning today and it is the perfect day to harvest some herbs for tea. Now, we'll be mostly harvesting herbs for tea. There are a few other herbs that I want to harvest for culinary purposes as well, since we're out here with the harvesting basket and the clippers. So the first herb on the list to harvest today is peppermint. As you can see, I have a lovely peppermint patch here. So we're going to harvest some of this and dry it for tea all winter long. So let's talk about timing when it comes to harvesting herbs. This peppermint here, as you can see, it is beautiful, green, leafy, no sign of flowering yet. Because we are harvesting this peppermint for the leaves, I want to go ahead and harvest it before it flowers. Now, when you're harvesting an herb, especially when you're harvesting it for medicinal purposes, you want to think about what part of the plant you're harvesting to determine timing. Now, you're going to want to harvest when the part of the plant that you're going for has the most energy possible. So if you think about it with leaves, that's going to be, and depending on the specific plant you're harvesting and depending on the time of year when it flowers, that might be mid to late spring. Whenever the plant is putting all of the focus or most of the focus of its energy into producing those leaves, that's when they're going to be the most potent medicinally. And if you're harvesting for culinary purposes, that's usually when they will be at their peak flavor as well. Once this starts flowering, the plant is going to turn a lot of its energy into producing those flowers and ultimately into producing seeds. It's not going to be using as much of its energy in these leaves, meaning the leaves may still taste good, they will still have some of their medicinal properties, but they won't be at their peak. And since I'm harvesting this for both flavor and for medicinal properties, we're going to go ahead and harvest it now before it starts flowering. Now, if you're harvesting something like a flower, obviously the timing's a little bit easier there because it's only going to be flowering for a short window. So you want to harvest while it's flowering. You want to harvest usually while those flowers are at their peak, which is going to be when they're fully open, but right at the beginning of when they have fully opened. Once they've been open for a little while, they're going to be starting to decline a little bit and they won't have as much potency. So that's when you want to harvest flowers. If you are harvesting a plant for the root, the timing is going to be very different. We are not going to be harvesting any roots today. But if you think about a plant, so if it is a perennial plant especially, at the end of the season when that plant is preparing to go dormant, it's going to take all the energy that's in the leaves and send that down into the root. Once most of the energy from the leaves is sent down into the root, usually in autumn, depending on the specific plant you're harvesting and depending on your area, that's when the root is going to have that's when it's going to have the strongest medicinal properties. So if you're harvesting the root, usually the time that you want to harvest is the fall. So just do a little bit of research with the specific plant you're harvesting and see what the ideal time of year to harvest that plant is. So that being said, that doesn't mean you can't harvest at other times. If you have fresh peppermint in your garden, it's the middle of summer and it's flowering and you want a cup of peppermint tea, maybe make some nice iced peppermint tea as a refreshing summer drink, that doesn't mean you can't harvest it. Go ahead and harvest it whenever it works for you. But there is the ideal way to do things, which is to harvest when that part of the plant is at its strongest, which for this peppermint, and because I'm going for leaves, is right now. So peppermint is not a picky plant that you have to make a point to harvest just the right way. I do like to harvest, when I'm harvesting a plant for leaves like this, I like to harvest right here above a leaf joint, because what will happen when you do that is these little leaves here will start new growing shoots and it will lead to a bushier plant overall and a larger harvest. That being said, peppermint grows abundantly. And I don't think you really, once you have an established peppermint patch, you don't really have to worry about not having enough. But just for aesthetics and just for, ideal harvesting, I like to do it that way. This would be more important if you're harvesting something, say like a holy basil, an annual that isn't going to get as large as this peppermint and you want to get the most out of it possible. So I do use that same harvesting technique when I'm harvesting a culinary basil. I think it's more important when it comes to that because it's going to create a bushier plant, which is going to lead to a larger harvest overall. So enough of that chit chat. Let's get harvesting this peppermint. One other consideration when it comes to the timing of harvesting herbs is I like to wait until usually about mid-morning until the sun has just burned the dew off of the herbs, but the sun has not gotten really hot yet, because especially when you're harvesting something like peppermint that has a lot of those oils in it, a lot of plants that have really strong scents, that's going to kind of evaporate. The sun will kind of evaporate it off the plant as the day goes on and as it gets really hot. So I like to ideally harvest this kind of plant early in the morning, mid-morning, before the sun has a chance to really wilt the plant. I find that the flavor and the medicinal strength is the strongest if you get it before it gets really hot. So I know this video is really about harvesting tea herbs, but while I'm over here in the herb garden, there are a couple culinary herbs I want to grab at the same time. My chives are blooming, and these flowers are delicious. Sometimes I like to snip these and just top salads with them, but I think today I'm going to harvest most of the heads that are fully open and infuse these into vinegar. I don't have a real lot of flowers on these plants at this time, but I'm just going to pick off, as I said, the ones that are fully open. The ones that are not fully open, I will just gradually harvest for salads. But the fully open ones, I'll make a small amount of vinegar. I'll probably take like some white wine vinegar, something that will really show the color of the chive flowers. It'll infuse it with a really nice, light, oniony kind of flavor, and that will be really good for things like salad dressing. That is probably how I'll use it. I'll infuse a little bit and just use it for salad dressing. I also want to harvest some of this oregano. I'm out of dried oregano in the house, and I could definitely use some more. While this does have medicinal properties, I'll just be harvesting this for culinary use. I'm going to harvest it pretty much the same way I harvested the mint. I might be a little bit less delicate with it. As you can see, it has smaller leaves. Once I get all these herbs into the house, I'm going to go ahead, the herbs that I have planned for tea, I'm going to dry them. The chive flowers, I'll just stick into a vinegar right away and let them infuse. The peppermint, my plan is to dry this for medicinal purposes and just for enjoyment. The oregano, I'm going to be drying just for cooking. Now, one other thing I should mention when it comes to harvesting these plants. So the peppermint, as I said, will flower at some point, and then it will turn its energy toward flower and ultimately seed production. By harvesting it before it flowers, I'm actually increasing the harvest. I'm delaying the time before it flowers, which means I should be able to get a second or maybe even a third harvest before it flowers, depending on how vigilant I am about harvesting on time. So that's just another little perk about harvesting these type of plants early and often. I collect these chive flowers in a little bowl here. So you can see with the oregano, I'm not being nearly as precise. I'm really just grabbing a handful and just cutting it. And then I'm just going to pull the grass blades out and stick it in my bowl. You can see back here, it's all been cut. I'm going to leave a little bit of this for when I want to use fresh oregano, but I do like to use dried oregano a lot. I like to crumble it up and put it in pizza dough and other things like that, so I do want to have some dried on hand. Throughout the garden, I have lots of chamomile, but it doesn't look like it's quite ready to harvest yet. I think it needs a few more days before it will be fully ready. But we will be coming out and harvesting chamomile really soon. So chamomile, of course, we harvest for the flower. So I want to wait until the flowers are fully open, till it's fully blooming. But basically, as soon as they're fully open and fully blooming, I'm going to come grab them. Chamomile is a little bit more tedious to harvest because you just want the individual flowers. But I find that it's worth it. It's actually kind of soothing to me to sit out in the garden and just pick chamomile into a little bowl, dry it as the season goes on, and then I have delicious tea to enjoy all year. So our herb basket is looking pretty full, but there are a few more herbs I want to harvest, so let's walk over to those and get harvesting. Before we head over there, I do have a calendula that's just opened. We're going to go ahead and harvest this. This is not for tea, but I do want to go ahead and harvest this. You could absolutely make tea with calendula. It's not my favorite flavor. It's a little bit bitter for me, but some people probably do enjoy it. I do like to use it medicinally, but I like to use it for skincare, in which case I will dry these and infuse them in oil, or I like to use them to support lymphatic drainage, in which case I'll mix it with some other herbs and basically make a tincture with alcohol out of it. So for now, I'm just going to, as I see the calendula flowers appear, I'm just gonna go ahead and pick them, let them dry, and at the end of the season, I'll infuse some into oil and some into alcohol, you know, to make various medicinal concoctions. Stick this in with the chive flowers for now. So over here in the side yard garden now, with the next herb that I want to harvest, which is lemon balm. I'm gonna harvest this just like I did the peppermint. In fact, they're actually cousins, and lemon balm is in the mint family. So we're just going to find a joint here, and we're just going to harvest right above that joint. I'm gonna give this a nice trim. Pretty much everything that we talked about with peppermint applies here with lemon balm as well. I'm just going to cut it back before it flowers. It will flower later in the season, but by cutting it back, I'm going to get the strongest medicine and flavor possible, and I'm also going to give myself a good chance at a second and possibly third harvest. It's going to increase the bushiness and overall size of the plant by harvesting nice and early like this. Now, I have mentioned a couple times in this video taking the herbs inside and drying them. I should probably clarify a little bit. Drying herbs is so simple. It doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be difficult. I do not use a dehydrator with drying herbs. If you do have a dehydrator that you want to use, you do want to use it on the lowest setting possible, because similarly to how I mentioned, the sun can evaporate some of those medicinal oils that are in these herbs. The dehydrator can do the same thing. So I prefer not to use a dehydrator. I shouldn't say never, I almost never use a dehydrator when it comes to dehydrating herbs. Unless I'm dehydrating something thicker and juicier. For the most part, 99% of what I harvest, I just let air dry. Now you can tie it in a little bundle and hang it up to dry. What I usually do is just lay out some paper towels. I strip the leaves off the stem, depending on what it is. With the oregano, I don't even bother stripping the leaves off the stem. I just crumble everything up once it's fully dry. With the peppermint and the lemon balm, because they have a little bit thicker and tougher stem, I strip the leaves off the stem and just let them dry. I just kind of toss them occasionally so that they don't mat. You want to increase airflow. So that's honestly the way that I do it. Very low tech, very simple. And then once they're fully dry, I just kind of crumble them up and store them in an airtight jar. So, you know, super easy, no equipment needed. So the last tea herb that I want to harvest today is this elderflower here, which obviously is another flower. So these have just fully opened, so it's the perfect time to harvest these. Now elderflower, this is the same plant that also produces the elderberry. So if I let these stay and get pollinated, they would turn into elderberries. So I am not going to harvest all of the flowers today. I'm planning to harvest probably about half of what's here and leave the rest to turn into elderberries. I actually like elderflowers. Well, as far as how I like them, I actually prefer elderflowers to elderberries. I think they have a lovely flavor and I really like them. But elderberries are really useful too. So I am going to leave some of these to mature into berries, and we'll go ahead and harvest some of these. I actually, as I mentioned with flowers, you have a more narrow harvesting window. Because of that, I have been harvesting flower clusters over the past few days as they've been fully opening. I already have quite a few flower clusters drying in my house, but I figured I'd take you with me to harvest a couple more today. So when I harvest elderflowers, I'm just going to go ahead and snap this off. I don't worry about removing the individual flowers until it's fully dry. I just basically stick the whole flower head upside down like this on a paper towel and let it dry. I find that once it's fully dry, it's a little bit easier to remove the dried flowers from this cluster than it is to remove them before they're fully dry. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick this inside with my other elderflower clusters and let it start drying. So this one here, you can see this is not ready to harvest yet. A few of the flowers are fully open, but the majority of them are not. And similarly here, this one will probably be ready to harvest tomorrow. You can see most of them are fully open. This one over here, this is ready, but this is one that I'm just going to allow to fully mature and turn into elderberries. And you can notice the beautiful crop of poison ivy I have growing behind this. We will not be harvesting that for anything. Actually, I'm looking for solutions to get rid of this without using chemicals and without exposing myself to a horrible rash. So if you have suggestions for that, please let me know. And I should say also without damaging the flower or the plants that I have growing here. As you can see out in the woods, that's where the poison ivy originated. I have a tarp out there trying to smother it, but it's creeping underneath and into my plants. So that needs to be dealt with. That's not the point of this video, but if you have any suggestions for dealing with that, I would definitely welcome them. This cluster looks just about ready too, so we're going to go ahead and take this one in. So a couple flower clusters to dry. So here is our basket of delicious and medicinal herbs. So if you're looking for more information about the medicinal uses of these herbs, I did actually record a video a few weeks or so, maybe a month ago, I can't remember exactly when. I will go ahead and link it in the video description, where we talked about medicinal herbs to grow in the home garden. I talked about my favorite herbs to grow, especially focusing on herbs that are very easy to grow and very versatile and useful. So if you're interested in learning more about the uses of the herbs, go ahead and check out that video. Thank you so much for joining me today on this little walk through my herb and tea garden. I hope that you are having a great day, and I can't wait to see you soon. I'll see you next time.